You are in trouble if you carry go. Open no more trouble, so say you go low. Say she be serious, dangerous, serious, dangerous, serious, dangerous. Voilà la partie.
Are you Hello? Good evening, everyone. Please have a seat. Hi, everyone. So I'm Obira Santua from Diaspora. I'm the Diaspora Engagement Coordinator. So I just wanted to do a quick introduction and introduce myself and also introduce the organization. As a returnee, I've had my peaks and my falls. However, we're all here, gathering here to discuss, connect, and talk about our experiences of being a returnee. Diaspora has been one of the gateways to Africa in terms of helping people transition and when they've returned back home. And this is another occasion for everyone to connect and talk about their experiences and really share how they've been transitioning in the Ghanaian community. So on that note, I'm going to ask you to take over.
Thank you very much. Let me use this microphone. Hello. Test and test. Okay, good. We're good. All right. It is about 10:30 a.m. in Los Angeles, 1:30 p.m. in Cleveland, Ohio, in Atlanta. No, it's about in Atlanta, Washington, New York, about 6:45 p.m. in London, 2:45 a.m. in Beijing, wherever you find black people. So it's hard for me to say good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or what. What I can say is that it's December in Ghana, and that means many things. That means a lot of people from the diaspora coming to Ghana, at least in the last few years. It also means a lot of traffic. And for that, I thank you all, especially for braving the traffic to make it here, and also to apologize for us beginning late. And getting down to business, you are at the return. So if that's not what you're looking for, you're at the wrong place. And Obaya has already begun by telling you what this is about, just overview, and giving her personal story. And I'll give my personal story too, just a little bit, because I kind of fit in this mold. I left Ghana in 1998 to the US. I went to school. Long story short, returned in 2012. And when I came, I had a bit of a reverse culture shock, coming to live back in your own country after almost 14 years abroad. But there were others who were coming around at the same time, and we all found our way into this organization Christabel had just started called Diaspora. So we had, we shared common interests, common issues, common experiences of being returnees. Now, I qualify the word returnee, and I'm going to take a step back, because before I returned, I made a documentary film. I'd become interested in the phenomenon of recent voluntary black immigration to the US, which will be from Caribbean, from Africa. Caribbean people had been coming to the US for many years, but more recently it's more Africans, and I can talk ad nauseum about the numbers, etc. But it became a matter of interest to me. And so when I came back, and all my peers sort of moving back, and in 2019, thanks to the government's Year of Return initiative, it just skyrocketed. Not just Ghanaians, but then all Ghanaian returnees, but then also a lot of people from the diaspora who didn't necessarily have Ghanaian roots. And it's continued since then. And it's interesting because as we're trying to put together a panel or the framework for this discussion, it struck me again, who is a returnee? or who is a person from the diaspora coming? Is it someone with 4 grandparents abroad who went involuntarily? Or is it a recent returnee? Or is it a Ghanaian who was born, somebody of Ghanaian or African descent who was born in the US but then is coming back? But all these are interesting, and to illustrate how complicated these conversations can be, but also very rich, we'll play a short clip from my documentary. This is not about my documentary, but we're going to play a short clip to give you a teaser of what the issues that come up from these conversations. So we'll play that right now.
Are you African American?
It's a complicated question.
No, I am Afro-Latino.
Yes, I am an African American. I'm a true African American.
I'm Caribbean American.
More Haitian American than African American, but more American than Haitian.
I speak Ashanti, Dangomba, Hausa, Gan, Yoruba, French, English, Portuguese.
We are in American society not to become comfortable with it, but actually to transform it into a more racially equitable society.
On the other side, you have continental Africans and West Indians who come to the U.S. specifically looking to the U.S. not for anything other than opportunity.
The Ivy League schools in our sample had 40% of the black students were of immigrant origin.
That's because we have chosen them.
And the question whether or not African immigrants and other black immigrants should benefit from affirmative action.
You're not quote unquote regular black. You came on a plane, not on a ship.
I grew up in Africa and I am an American.
Al Sharpton does not speak for me.
It is this huge immigrant bloc that's being ignored.
African American or African, you're black.
A lot of Caribbean nationals are not just black. A lot of them are different ethnicities. Then we need to be able to now offer them culture-specific help. The Haitian need their services in Creole. And we're being lumped into one community or another.
You walk around in this black suit and the question is, are you African American?
Thank you for that. Thank you. So that's the trailer for the documentary to illustrate the complication of what is an African American, if you like, and therefore a returnee. But somehow we've managed to get together a group of people who represent the range and not just of background, family background, but then also experiences and moving to Ghana. And so I will call them to come and join me and begin the discussion. I'll begin with Marvin Walker, who is the founder and CEO of Run Free Properties. You will at some point tell us what you consider yourself, so please have a seat. Thank you. We have the African superstar, who is a musician, motivational speaker, influencer. Please join us. And many more. Lakeisha Ford, who is the founder and MD of Ford Communications, also VP of the Ghana-Jamaican Chamber of Commerce. Right. And we have Nana Amayanka, who is the founder and CEO of Naya Naturals Limited. So, thank you all for coming. Quick one, I'm going to sit in a second. I'd like to know what you consider yourselves, so you start.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing? I think the traffic has everyone really dull. But anyway, yeah, it's still December, so we need to ginger up the conversation a little bit. How is everyone doing? Okay, something. Hi, everyone. I'm Lakeisha Marie. The question is, what do I consider myself? I say Jamaican American. So I was born in America, in New Jersey, but raised Jamaican. So in my mind, I'm Jamaican first, because that's my culture, that's what I was reared in. There is, and then my national identity is American. But of course, you can never disassociate if you have spent time growing up. So I say Jamaican American.
Good evening, everyone. I consider myself a Guyanese American. I was born in Georgetown, Guyana, migrated to America when I was 5 years old, and grew up in America, but I've recently traced my roots back to Ghana, so I consider myself a Guyanese American Fanti.
Good. You know, finally, Guyana and Ghana together, because I heard back in the day, even the post office used to mix up mail from Guyana and Ghana. And in the last 2 weeks, I'm sure some people have fielded questions about why is Venezuela attacking Ghana, right?
Yeah.
All right, anyway, thank you.
Yes.
African superstar?
Good evening, everybody. I'm the one and only African superstar. I was asked this question prior, and I consider myself a bit stateless because neither of my parents are American. My mother's from Bermuda. My father's from Cameroon. I grew in America. I've lived in the UK, and now I'm in Ghana. So I'm a global citizen, you know.
Okay, great. Thank you. Nanama? Interesting.
Hello?
Yes,
okay.
please.
So I consider myself a Ghanaian. I was born and raised here, and then I moved to the US, lived and worked, and then I moved back. But then also I have an American passport, but I've always considered myself a Ghanaian.
All right, thank you. Now we'll begin with a bit of with some stats and pictures. So I'm going to put it up now, and sorry you can't see. Yeah, I can't reflect it, right? Sorry about that. Don't worry, if you can't see, I'll tell you what it is.
Okay.
That's not it, don't worry. Okay. You see what it is? Who can pronounce this? Okay, good. Now, you know what this means?
I know what it means.
What does it mean? Sorry, I took my microphone. What does it mean? Okay, all right, fleeing. Okay. And if you followed social media much, you know this is one of the conversations in Ghana, and I'll explain in a second. Over 3,000 nurses have left Ghana since 2020 for greener pastures. This is from the Ghana Health Service. One of the most unspoken, less discussed stories is the number of Africans going to America through Mexico. And this is from an article in 2014 in the New York Times about the number of African immigrants in the US. Now, why am I showing you this? Because some would argue that you guys are going in the wrong direction. Because in Ghana, many young people are trying to leave Ghana. You chose to move to Ghana. So it's kind of reverse Jakpa. And we'd like to find out from you when you moved to Ghana, why you moved to Ghana. So we'll start from Lakeisha, come down this way.
Sure.
And I'll
sit now.
When we moved to Ghana and why. So I officially made the decision to move in 2016, but I had been coming for since 2008 actually. So I started as a student and I always said I would come back. And I came here on research 2015, did my finished and then decided to say 2016. So I don't even, 9 years, like it's been about 9 years now. I lose count. And then you said why? All right, so wow. I think the first time I came, I felt like Ghana was very much like Jamaica. So I felt some familiarity and I felt comfortable and I was embraced socially. So that kind of made it easy to navigate. And of course, I always said I would come back. And then fast forward, after doing my research, I saw that there was a misconception and just really a breach in communication between both spaces. And I always believe that at the center of every problem and solution is communications. So I wanted to use PR to, we say this all the time, so cliche, bridge the gap. I wanted to use PR to bridge the gap and connect businesses, but also open up people's understanding to what's happening on the ground here. So I would say I came back because I love it, but I stayed because of the work and really wanted to see that vision come to fruition. And of course, that's not something that will ever stop. There's a lot of work to do, so 9 years, yeah.
Thank you. And Marvin?
So I started my journey to Ghana in October of 2018. Now, I never planned on coming to Ghana. When I was growing up in America, and I had my dreads, and I would talk in heavy patois, people would say, Marvin, where you from? I said, I'm in Guyana. They said, Ghana? I said, no, man, Guyana. Guyana's in South America, Ghana's in Africa. And for years, growing up in America, I didn't know I was denying my heritage. So I had a contract with a very large tech company in America. And after about a year, they replicated my whole business model and displaced me. And I lost a significant amount of money. And a young lady was like, my operations manager first was like, Marvin, instead of trying to fight this company, why don't you take your technology and go to Ghana? And I was like, bro, I'm not going to Ghana, never thought about going to Africa, leave me alone, don't even bring up the subject. And he kept bringing it up, like, bro, you really need to go. It's the first African country to get the independence, it's free. And one of the young ladies who had the contract with me that actually started housing me because the situation got so bad for me that I was homeless. I got evicted, I was sleeping in my car in my warehouse, and she was an older lady, Monica Chapman. She said, Marvin, why don't you just go to Ghana? I'm gonna pay for you. Your operations manager keep telling you there's opportunities, go. So I never planned on coming to Ghana. But like this young lady, when I got off the plane and I saw that it was nothing like I imagined, and then when I saw them selling plantain chips on their head like I used to do in Guyana with my grandmother, it took me back to my childhood, and I was like, wow. And then I bought some Ashuriye, because that was my guilty pleasure as a kid, and I said, I'm staying in Ghana. So from October to February, I came, signed some MOUs, came back, signed a contract in December, left, went back to America, got some term sheets for the company that I met here, and I moved here February of 2019. So within 4 to 5 months, I was living in Ghana permanently and only went back for 7 days and have been here since. I've been here 5 years, married a Ghanaian, have 2 beautiful children, and I call this place home.
So you returned in the year of return?
No, I came before the year of return.
Okay, but then you moved in the year of return, 2019.
Yeah, but I don't think the announcement hadn't gone out yet when I came.
Okay, all right. Before I move to the African superstar, Guyanese plantain chips or Ghanaian plantain chips?
They all taste the same. No wahala here.
Okay, all right. We want you to be able to still be welcome. All right, African superstar.
Okay, so I had my initial trip here to Ghana in 2016, and I loved it because obviously the word Jokba, I'm definitely the reverse option. I feel that the West is a very hostile place. I feel that we do not need to subject ourselves to that. I think a lot of our people are dealing with psychological issues because of the environment that we're in. And me being a person of action, I thought that it was necessary for me to take the next step beyond the vehicles that we've been provided in the West to fight these injustices via the judicial system, which is not going to actually give us any recourse. So I was searching for the place to be when I visited Ghana, and this was the place to be. I mean, it's still the place to be. It's the Black Star of Africa. It illuminates the path. Everybody looks to Ghana throughout the continent. They always have historically as well. I permanently settled in 2020 after, I did tours. When I came to Ghana, I've been associated with the Ghanaian community since I was in Columbus, Ohio. And the reason why was I stated earlier that I'm stateless. So people are always very curious about my background, my origin. Oh, where are you from? Who are your people? What's that name? This kind of thing. But when I came around Ghanaians, they were like, oh, are you Ewe? And I was like, what? So I was very curious to know why every other person was, didn't see me as part of their umbrella, but Ghanaians did. And so I began to investigate that, and it has been an amazing home to me. I represent Ghana everywhere I go. I promote it to the continent through social media, also through music. I wear my kente cloth proudly everywhere, special events and things like that. So I think that more people from the diaspora should do their own research. We know that the media is never going to tell us the complete comprehensive story. We know it's biased, and obviously the narrative that they have provided us, in addition to no formal education about the continent. I was always very curious about that as well. Why don't we learn about our heritage? Why don't we learn about our contributions? We learn about the transatlantic slave trade in America, and that's it. And there's so much more to be desired. So we should take the initiative, those of us that are in the West, and travel is a lot more accessible for us, to do our own research, tell our own story, and create our own narrative.
Thank you very much. And I should add that this is part of the research people can do to come, qualitative research, as the Bukolong people call it. Please, Nanama, you tell us.
So I feel like sitting on this panel and hearing their stories of them not all being Ghanaians, but still wanting to be here actually makes me feel like the odd one out, even though we are in Ghana. Because I was born and raised here, and then I had the opportunity to go to the US on scholarship for college, stayed and worked, and then also had my master's degree. I was doing great, so I had no reason to come back. So when I decided, I wasn't also one of those people who were going and coming, trying out Ghana. I never did that. It was never on my list of one day I will come to Ghana and when I retire. It was just one of those things that at a point in my career when I wanted, after my MBA, when I wanted change, it was one of the options that was given to me was come to Ghana and maybe try, you can work here for a bit and see if you would like it. And that was it. And when I made the move, I packed everything. I literally packed everything and moved completely. And everybody was like, are you crazy? At least leave something. Come and check it out. I'm like, well, if I'm going to Ghana, then I'm going to Ghana. So I didn't have any reason to leave. I had a job that was paying me well. I had, I had built a life in the US that was comfortable. And so the reverse Japa really is, I feel like I really represent that, because most people ask me that question when they meet me and they're like, so why did you come? You were doing IT. That's where the money was. You were you were doing well. You have no reason to, and now what are you doing? It's almost as if I'm not doing anything, Hannah. So even after being here all these years, and then, because when I came, I worked with a consulting company for a while. And then I think it was like a couple of months, and it didn't work out, and I had to figure my way out. And that's when I started my business, Naya Naturals, which was actually a hobby. It's something that, for me, I keep getting, even today, somebody asked me, why did I come? It's almost as if people think there's something wrong with that move of, why will you come back to Ghana and do something when you're already where everybody wants to be and you literally have everything that's set for you. But I feel like I feel more fulfilled as a person. I feel like I'm doing more. Even though I studied information technology, I feel like I'm using more of it in building a business than just working in somebody's business as as an analyst. And for me, there's a broader thing to what we do with our careers, with our business, with our knowledge. And I feel like that is what drives me while I'm here, knowing that the individual skills we learn can be used in broader business management, in broader business growth, in developing systems and opportunities for others. And that's where I see the opportunity in being in Ghana and why I am still here.
Okay, great, thank you. And actually, the fact of you being a Ghanaian, born and bred in Ghana, introduces another interesting question. For you, we've heard a bit about the expectation they had versus the reality when they came. When you returned, how different was it from the country you left?
I don't think I had any expectations. When I left, I was 18. At 18, we've just finished SS, you're going to college. You don't even, and I wasn't the type of, I feel like I didn't have any expectations of Ghana when I was leaving. So I didn't have any coming back. Okay. So it was literally just, you are home. That's actually how it felt. Okay. I think I also came home, I lived with my family, so it felt like I was home versus I was in a new place trying to figure my way out. Okay. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. And I just want to add that this is an open forum, so if you have any unique stories, we just have to sort of curate people with very interesting experiences and stories and backgrounds. This is going to be an open forum. If on any of the questions you have a unique story you want to tell, hold on to it. We'll get to it, and then we'll take different stories from the audience. And I'd like to put up the PowerPoint to ask African Superstar a question. So once the PowerPoint goes up, I will show you, ask you a question.
From my back.
Sorry?
I can't see it at my back.
Oh, don't worry, I'll tell you. Don't tell you. And you will know when I ask.
Okay.
Because it's one question of the PowerPoint just for you. Okay.
Wow.
Let's go. Is it the right slide? I think it's the right slide. Okay, there you go. All right, okay. All right, what does it say? You know what that means? Do you know what that means? Okay, good. For those who are not aware, it means literally a white person, right? Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that when you came, people used to ask you whether you were Ewe or what. Did anyone call you Obroni? Or has anyone called you Obroni?
Just a 2-year-old baby. just a child so far.
A 2-year-old baby?
To my face, yeah. Only
Okay,
one, yeah.
All right. How did it make you feel for somebody to call you a white person?
Well, I mean...
using the same word, I think, we just have to sort of qualify the word Obroni a little bit. Even though it literally means a white person, foreigner. It could also be foreigner. Right. But how did it feel to be called the same term that will be used for a white person?
I mean, I think I have a very broad perspective with these things. In reality, people that are raised in the West, whether or not we want to admit it, we have a lot of Western culture. We have the accent, we have the outlook, we have the mentality in many ways, which would distinguish us coming to such an environment as Ghana. So I think the communication, like was mentioned, bridging the gap is very important because realistically, up until, the last 4 or 5 years, many people, continental Africans, have not had much interaction with those of us from the diaspora, apart from what they see in the media. So they naturally correlate. What I'm gathering from what I've seen is they just correlate, well, you're a Black American, so you live like white Americans. The disparity that we experience in the West is like they are completely unaware of it or very uninformed about it. So I believe that we're receiving the same sides of the same coin, different sides of the same coin. We in the West get a certain narrative of the continent, and people on the continent get a certain narrative of the West. And until we start communicating with each other, then we will see how many similarities and those kind of things. So I don't personally take it personal, but I do know that actual, Black Americans that have much more lineage in America are very offended by that because they feel rejected in the West. They're always told they're from Africa. If they don't like it, they should go back to Africa. Once they make that move and they come here, and then people are like, no, you're American, you're a Brownie, and it's like, well, where do I fit? Where do I belong? So it's a complicated topic.
Has anybody else been called a brony? You have been. Please tell us your experience and how you felt.
I was angry. I was like, hey, don't call me no white man. I said, you know how I feel about the white man? I said, do not call me the person that oppressed me. Like, I have trauma, right? Like, when the police pull you over, like, I literally get the bubble guts. And I mean, I don't have a criminal record, but when they see you as a criminal. When you walk past a white woman, she grabs her purse. So when somebody called me white, first I said, I thought I was dark, but he was like, you're white. So I didn't like it at all, and I was like, yo, why are you calling me a white person? And they said, she said, oh, well, you articulate like that. And I said, oh, that's why? But white means your skin color. And yeah, and that, I learned from communication that they perceive it differently. Sometimes it's the way you speak, not necessarily the color. So, but I didn't like it at all.
Okay. All right. And you have any experience, Lakeisha?
Yeah, I've experienced that before. I think at first I didn't understand it, but in learning some tree, I figured out my comeback. Someone would say, oh, Bruni, I'm like, meye obibini, like, I'm a black person. And that's it. Like, I honestly have some unpopular opinions about this. I don't necessarily, nothing about my identity centers oppression or white people. So if that's being given to me, it's up to me to take it or not. But if I don't identify that way, then it's like, okay, well, let's get you some more language so that you can use the right ones to qualify me. I didn't necessarily take offense. I just was confused, like, I'm a black person, I'm not a white person. But I also think, I think any place that has been colonized has the issue of, colorism, oppression, and just this idea of othering their own or black people. It's a very complex and layered experience that I would say the black diasporan has to experience or has personally. So being called Obroni, I think it's kind of up to you to accept or reject it. But because there are people who are still traumatized from their experience in their country, those things, it would hurt, it would feel away. And just like, if you have, let's say, a Ghanaian or someone that's not from America that goes into America and maybe gets called the N-word, they will probably look at the person like, wow, you must really be a fool, because there's nothing in my head that makes that qualifies that statement. So something's wrong with you, like you almost reject it because you know who you are. But unfortunately, you have people who are still figuring that out. So those statements can kind of digress in terms of people feeling confident in their blackness and trying to find their place in the world. But for me, like, first of all, I'm Jamaican, and you can't tell us anything about ourselves. We feel very confident. Yeah, so like, we're confident, and that is just how we've been reared. So I think I've taken some of that into the world with me, and it has protected me. It has also worked against me. But I don't necessarily identify with that, and I don't qualify it. I rather deal with it when it happens. No, I'm a black person. And then I also see that sometimes people say it jokingly, even though it's not a joke, and I just take it as that, like, all right. But I don't let people just call me that, and that's it.
Yeah, I was gonna, Anna, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually interesting hearing their perception of being called Obroni, because I don't, even from my perspective, I think even from when a Ghanaian actually call somebody Obroni, it's not, I've never actually thought of it as being the same as somebody calling somebody with the N-word. I've always looked at it as it's just foreign, not necessarily white, and not necessarily as an insult, or not necessarily as something from qualifying you as something that that's negative, or that we don't like that. So I think that's actually interesting hearing the perspectives on that, because for me, even our friends who are mixed or light-skinned, we call them that. And it's all in the sense of, there is some foreign matter in you, not necessarily as something that we see as negative, or so that's the perspective is actually quite interesting to me to hear.
Yeah. I think we had a president for 19 years that most people would consider Obroni.
Exactly, and they actually called him that.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to actually ask what advice you would give to somebody watching on YouTube or Facebook to prepare them to be called that in Ghana. But I think you guys have done a wonderful job of that from different perspectives. But speaking of white men or white people, let me put something up. When I was doing my documentary, one thing somebody mentioned which really struck me was that when she moved to Ghana, seeing a black person on the money changed, like it's a different world. And you can see it. I mean, you know what the electricity note looks like. It doesn't buy much these days, does it? What does it buy these days?
Pure water.
Sorry? Yeah, it doesn't buy much these days, but it is still a black person. That's Kwame Nkrumah, for those who don't know, on the note. And she said, like, it did something to her to see a black person on the money. And for me, growing up and having some of these conversations, one thing that I remember is that one thing that struck me through the conversations was that when I was growing up, when I walked on the plane, I knew the pilot to be black. When I went to a hospital, I knew the doctor would be black. So some things were never even a question in my mind, ever. What has been your experience? And it may not apply to you guys much, since you may have some experiences or connections to countries where people on the money were black. So I'm going to do a quick throw to the audience. Unless somebody wants to say something about that, we'll go to the audience for one person to give their experience of coming to a country where the person on the money was black, which they may not have been used to where they were living before. Any thoughts here or there? You can start. We'll take some.
Okay.
We'll take one from the audience. You can start.
So for me, that stood out to me as well when I came. I mean, I even put it on my Facebook page, my first trip, like, yo, look, the people on the money is black, right? Again, when I went to America, I was 5 years old. Every dollar bill I ever seen was just white people on it, right? And I was discussing that with someone, and they were speaking about the psychological effects that it has on your children, like especially if you have young men, right? And she said to me, she said, we grew up seeing that. But so it gave us a sense of pride. Like, so even when you go to America, it don't affect you to see that all the money has, white people on it, because, well, we grew up seeing that. But when you grow up in America and all you see is the white people on the money, the white Jesus on the wall, you think everything is white and white is right, right? But when she said how if your kids grow up seeing that, they're already reassured of who they were. I said, I want my sons to grow up in a country, because even though I was born in Guyana, I didn't live there long enough to spend the money, to see the money. But those little psychological programming, I think, especially for young African males, is good for them to see. So I was impressed by it as well.
Any thoughts from the audience? Anybody want to chip in on that? If not, I'll go to the other mind, try to get your experience, having grown up with black people on the money, to America and seeing old white men on the money.
So it's interesting to me, because I've actually heard, I recently met an African American that just moved to Ghana, and it's interesting just being around her and the things she's surprised by. That, oh my goodness, that everybody is black, and this is this, and there's black people here. And I remember I invited her somewhere, and she's like, are the people there black? And I'm like, we're in Ghana. What do you expect? So it's actually interesting because when I went to the US, even though I grew up here, it was something I actually didn't think about much until people started pointing it out to me. So I feel like because I grew up here and most people were black, even when I went to the US and I got most people white, it took a while for people to start pointing it out to me that I was the only black person in the room before it started clicking. My college was an HBCU, but the companies I worked in, I was usually probably one of two black people in the entire company because I was in the tech space. And so it's something that I started when even things would happen on projects that I would overlook and somebody would be like, why did they leave you out of there? Was it because you were black? So people had to almost consciously tell me that things were happening to me because I was black, and I was just looking at it as, if they don't want to be there, I don't want to be there. That was pretty much how I took most things. And I think for me, my identity as a black person wasn't really defined by whether people included me or not, because I've been around black people, and this is how we take care of each other. And when I'm not around black people, I don't really expect much. Or if you are there and I have to have a relationship with you for work or for friendship or something, if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it's not because I'm black or white. But when people started pointing out, oh, because you were black this, because you were white this, it had to be pointed out to me before I noticed it. That when I came back, then it was like, rather when you come back, then it's like, we black people, we do this. That's what you hear when you are here. It's almost as if now that I'm back, people are now pointing out things that black people do that is rather negative versus it's rather being a positive thing because you're among black people. So I feel like even the experience as a Ghanaian in Ghana or a black person among other black people in Ghana is different from a black person in the US among other black people or even white people. Because you still have to be, how it's expressed, the things that people talk about, the things that have to be pointed out to you, I think it's almost like he's saying, maybe because when you are born a particular way and you're raised a particular way, it creates certain things that you become almost blinded to unless somebody tells you there's something wrong with it. Okay. Yeah.
You wanted to ask something there?
Yeah, I wanted to tag in on this. It was very refreshing to not be considered a minority. I never considered myself a minority. I knew I was a minority in settings, but when I came to Ghana, it was like, wow. And I remember the first year I went to Accra Mall following Eid after Ramadan, and I had never seen that many black people in my life. I mean, the mall was jam-packed, the car park was packed. I said, wow. And because I'm a YouTuber, I would share these things with my audience, and it was also mind-blowing for them, like many have mentioned, not being in a minority setting, because it was very frustrating for me being the only one in the boardroom, being the only one in certain, when I went to the university and things like that. I was just like, where are my people? Like, where do I belong? I also think there's a lot of conveniences here in Ghana for our people. You can find hairdressers everywhere. You don't have to search for them. You can find the kind of food you want. I mean, there's a variety of nightlife. When I lived in the UK, there would be like one African club, one African restaurant. You have to travel all across town or whatever to find what you want. To get yam, to get banku, it's imported, it's expensive, and to get kente cloth, I just love here. I have like loads of them because I can get them easily, so it's just, for me, it's convenience. The hospitality that is here is absolutely unmatched. For me to not be indigenous to Ghana, but created the family and friends here is a testament to how I've been welcomed here, and I was born and raised in America, and I was not welcomed there. I was constantly made to feel like an Obroni in America. So I love Ghana so much, and I think many diasporans have echoed this sentiment across the continent.
Thank you. And I'm going to keep that money on there, and it's not worth much these days, but I tell you this, because I want to continue on money. How do you find prices in Ghana?
Who started?
Any thoughts about what were you expecting prices to be, and general prices, how do you find them?
So about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, my wife and I went to Ibri, and we were buying vegetables and everything there. And when I left, I was like, yo, I converted the money to dollars. I said, we just bought a whole month of groceries for like $40. I said, this would never happen in America. So I'm ecstatic at the cost of things here in Ghana. And it may not be fair, but all my money's in dollars. I live in Ghana, but I make dollars. So it's great for me. But I always convert it when I spend CDs. I'm like, yo, this is amazing. I could get all this. A haircut, to me, is the best thing. I pay 20 CDs, right? And I convert, I'm like, yo, that's like $1.80. In America, I pay $35 for a fade and my beard. So I'm like adding up the savings. I'm like, yo, I just love being in Ghana. So certain things the price is great. But like when it came to housing, this is why I got into real estate. When I was struggling at first, and you have to pay 12 months in advance in rent, I mean, when that year was ending, I'm like, yo, where's this money gonna come from at first, right? I was scratching my head, and it was a lot of pressure and anxiety for that.
I'm gonna hold you for a second, because many people watching on YouTube or Facebook may not understand what you mean by paying 12 months rent in advance. So please explain that.
Let me do that. So what I'm accustomed to in America, when you want to get an apartment, you pay 1 month rent and 1 month security deposit, and you move in. When I came to Ghana and they said you have to pay 12, 24, or even 5 years rent, because I was looking for corporate space, I said, who has that much money to pay up front for accommodation or for office space? And it blew my mind. I said, that is money that you could be putting in your business or you could be using for something else. So that really threw me for the loop. And when, you know, the year was elapsing and I had to figure out how do I come up with $8,000 at a go to pay for it, it was stressful. Now in hindsight, I love the idea of paying in advance for rent because you don't have to worry about it. But it's just, things are not bad or good, it's the position you're in when it's happening to you. That's what I realized. But at first, it was a shocker for me. But I love the price that I pay for groceries and, you know, certain things like that.
Okay. I'm just gonna say something very quickly. So a couple of weeks ago, I went to do my hair. I went to get my locks retwisted. And usually I know the price, what it used to be before, and I'll pay and add a tip to it. A generous tip, I hope. And over time, as inflation goes, and I know what inflation is, because I track it, I would add more. And so the last time I went, I was thinking, maybe, what if I'm underpaying? What if the inflation in this market is higher and I'm underpaying them? So I sent a text, like, hey, what's the current normal rate, the standard rate? So I want to make sure I'm not cheating you. And she responds, oh, you're not cheating us. Left it at that. So, because my frame of reference to is the US, doing it in the US or here. So yeah. I know, like, it's so ridiculously different. But anyway, sorry, Lakeisha, I wanted to add something to it.
To be honest, like, I think we all have our privileges, right? And in terms of, like, when we talk about being here in Ghana and spending dollars, sometimes your dollar is going to go farther than, you know, someone who might be making CDs. But I feel like I've been here long enough where I don't convert. I use CDs. Like, the value of what it is here, when you look at the price of mango, when it went from 8, now it's 15, I'm stressed. Like, I'm like, what happened? You know, like, this is not what I remember. So funny enough, like, I think in CDs, actually.
This what?
I think in CDs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's just a fruit of being here for a long time and actually living here full time. Even when I go back to America, like, I'm like doing the exchange, but based on the rate in Ghana, it's crazy. So the pricing on things is just insane. As we know, inflation, like, the currency performance, like we can go on and on. And I'm speaking from the perspective of someone who's an entrepreneur. My business is a Ghanaian business. We're also registered in the States, but started here, you know, and really out the mud, like this mud here in Accra. So I understand value based on this country, and I don't necessarily think about like, oh wow, it's so cheap based on dollars. I'm on Ghana's system. Yeah, I'm on Ghana's system, so I negotiate like that too. But I'm also just like a tough negotiator overall. Like when I went to China, same, like I'll negotiate anything down, like don't play. So yeah, pricing is tough. Sometimes your dollar can go far, but then you have certain structures like, yeah, rent might be cheap per month, but then when you have to pay a year in advance, 2 years in advance, it changes things. But then I do like the philosophy around, I like some philosophies around money here where things are paid up front because there's not much of a credit system. Your psychology around how you spend and how you live your life, like there's more accountability. As you know, in America, you can have it now and pay later. But in Ghana, it's the opposite. And there is that upfront payment because there's not much of a credit system. So the honor is paying for it now. And I think that pulled me out of some of the American bad habits of, you know, having it now, pay later. So I feel like I spend like a Ghanaian. I think in CDs and think about value based on, because my life is based here. I hire here, I work here, I procure from here. So those are my thoughts on that.
Right. Thank you very much. You wanted to ask something? Microphone, please.
When I moved to Ghana in 2013, the dollar to CD was 2.2. Now it's 12. So for someone that reversed, you kind of almost feel like you are working your way backwards. And for living here full-time and running a business here, I was actually just doing the math the other day, and I said, what's 100,000 was, what do you call it, just 2 years ago in 2020, it's now, no, 2021, because it went from 6 to 12. It's now literally, what do you call it, 200,000. So it's like your money here, it's not, you may think that, okay, it buys less here, but generally, it bothers because you're looking at it as, is the general, are Ghanaians getting better? Is our standard of living really becoming better as you can, if you are earning in dollars, it's easy to convert and say, oh wow, it's cheap, we can do that. But when you live here and you also understand what people earn and the livelihood, then you're like, and you also see that with inflation and the dollar and exchange rate is getting worse, you actually wonder if Ghana is really getting better for the people, for those that are moving back. Because it's, I see the excitement when you're moving back and you're converting the dollars. What happens 10 years later when the dollars have run out and you are living here, you are working here, and you have cities? And then I think that's when the reality of most returnees feel it. But then they forget that people who have lived here have lived like that the whole time. And so I think sometimes it creates a weird insensitivity when we are here. Because even when I go to the US and you take an Uber and it's $50, I'm like, shoot, I just spent $500. There's no way I would have spent $500 for a trip. 500 cities, right? 500 cities for this, 15-minute trip. But you just did it because that is the cost of Uber. And so when you're here and it's like 15 cities, 25 cities, 45 cities, and people are complaining that 45 cities on an Uber is expensive, you're like, you have no idea what actually Uber can be. Yeah. But I think in a way for somebody who has moved here and is trying to build a business here, it's worrisome is to actually figure out whether we are actually getting better. Are we actually improving the economy with all the work we are doing? Or are we just here just joining the stress? Are we just part of it? Because somebody moving in bringing dollars would say it's cheap. But if you live here and you see it not getting actually getting worse than it was before, then it's actually more concerning than it is helpful.
I think you're very good points. And So what I'm getting from all this is that part of this is to sort of, as you said, research for people who may be considering moving to Ghana. If you have U.S. stream of income, keep it. And that will help. And on that note too, what you mentioned about those coming new with new dollars, and later on becomes, if you're going to stay at NCDs, it's a different story. A friend of mine in Miami a year or two ago, who really wants to move to Ghana, was concerned because she had heard that the Americans and other people living abroad moving here were increasing the cost of living for local people.
That's right.
Do you guys feel that way?
Yes.
Wow. I was not expecting that.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean,
okay, sorry, go ahead.
I can give you just like a quick example. Getting your hair braided. Whoa, like it used to be like, okay, maybe tops, like 300 CDs. That was even a little expensive. Now, Christmas, the people coming in, those hair braiders, they do not bring the price down. It stays there. And I feel like that's just a quick example of how, the influence of tourism affects kind of the cost of living. And there's no leniency in terms of price fluctuation where the suppliers are like, okay, we know Christmas is over, let's come down. They don't. I can call some braiding companies, but I won't. But that's an example. And it's across, I would say, industries as well. And people, and you guys remember when the currency fluctuated last year? And everyone was using dollars to basically price everything. That was super tough. Forex loss for companies was just out of this world by the time January, February came around. And when you're doing business with people from outside and these things happen, in order to keep, let's say, good rapport, sometimes the people inside the country have to absorb the loss because they don't understand that this fluctuation, it's not your fault. They're just like, but I gave you this amount, and for example, the sponsors are supposed to give me back that same amount, and it's like, well, when you gave me that amount, it was worth this. Sponsors paying you back now, your money is worth that. There's a difference of who takes that burden, you as a service provider. So it does, I would say, affect just cost of living locally. Yeah.
I mean, I knew the prices go up in December. I didn't realize they stay throughout. That's, wow.
I think also because they've also noticed more people are staying. So for me, that's the other thing I ask about sometimes when I say, okay, you have more foreigners moving into Ghana with year of return and everything, but what is the real impact on the average Ghanaian who still earns 1,000 cedis a month or 2,000 cedis a month and has to make a living through all of these increases because there's more people moving in? That for them it means it's justifying why prices can go up, but we are not, because if even if, let's say, an African American moves to Ghana and starts a business, even earning in dollars, are they willing to pay dollar rates to the Ghanaians? Or are they going to pay Ghana rates to the Ghanaians and then pay themselves dollar rates to maintain their standard of living? Because for me, at the end of the day, it creates this disparity where eventually the Ghanaian keeps getting it worse. So now this may sound bad, but it sounds like we have a new oppressor.
That's an interesting question. Very, very, very interesting point. As economists say, prices are sticky. So once they go there, that's it. But the flip side of that, curious, do your accents increase prices?
Absolutely. And this is what I talked about earlier in terms of everyone having their privilege, right? Some people will say, oh, but you're a woman and you're American and you speak, American English, but when you check, right, you should be fine. What's the issue? But when I'm shopping, the privilege is now the person who speaks Twi and can go back and forth. So I have this amalgamation of Pidgin, some patois, my fig tree. I just put it all in, and I just move.
Switch code.
Yeah, I do.
All right. And okay, great points on these, and we could go on forever with it. But just one last point on the money thing. They say wealth is health, or health is wealth, whichever one it is. It goes both ways, maybe. There was somebody else who was supposed to be on this panel, but couldn't because her daughter had a medical emergency. And interesting thing about her is that she's been in Ghana for a while, and she's moving back because she has special health needs, all right? Question then is, and many people that I know who have tried to move have raised healthcare as an issue that makes them sometimes think twice. What have been your experiences, and what would you advise someone to do to sort of, how do you deal with healthcare?
Okay, I'll start. What I'll say is, speaking from the perspective of an American, people who hold American passports, don't stop being American. Do not stop. You know, I think you should keep those things going in terms of your health care, your real estate, whatever you have, your credit, keep it building. We're citizens of the world. Just because you come and move to Ghana, or maybe you're really annoyed with the States, it is a privilege to have things moving in different countries. So I'm just going to use that as a context. Now, coming to your question on the health, it is cause for concern, just as it is in any developing country, emerging nation. The systems are not going to be the same as maybe your developed country. So that's something you need to take into consideration based on your health conditions or what you may need for care. I recommend people get international health care. If you need to be flown out, you have your insurance in place. Do well with your car insurance on the ground here. Just de-risk. That's what I'll say. De-risk. Put your insurance things in place. Make sure you have a next of kin, someone that you can call, someone who's like from Ghana, that maybe can be your family here, that can support you. Maybe if something happens and you can't look after yourself. So these are some of the social things you can put in place, because I say Ghana is very communal first, and then it's like the system. But for us coming from the States, we think the system, and then we think individual, system, and then the community. So these are some things that I would advise. Have all your insurance, but also do well with your relationships, and find a family that you can call your own. That's important. And yeah, it is cause for concern, so we have to be vigilant on that.
What we're saying is, look at faces sometimes, so just make sure that you have people who know your face. And African Superstars, okay, let's start with Marvin, and we'll come to you too on the health question.
So it's funny, healthcare is my primary business, and that's what I came here with, and I was dumping dollars into my business but charging CDs, and I was frustrated because the organization that brought me here, I brought a technological platform, Daycare Health and Transport, that helps them connect to healthcare workers on demand. So when you talk about the 300 plus or 3,000 nurses that left Ghana, right, I came here and I was empowering nurses, creating jobs for them, and because my company's in the US, I could help them go to the US and work, right? But then people are like, hey, you're scamming. I said, you think I came from America to scam you on a healthcare job? But I brought ambulances into the country. I brought this healthcare platform. I have about 300 medical doctors on my platform now, and I have almost 700 nurses here. I have nurses right now in Villaggio and a few other places taking care of clients. In my communities that I built, healthcare was one of my reasons for not wanting to come to the continent. I was like, I heard they have really bad healthcare. I'm not going. So when I came here and my contract didn't work out, I launched my business independently of the company that brought me here to do it with them. And I went to every single developer and I said, hey, I got 30 ambulances. Why? This was before they brought the 321 ambulances in, right? To give perspective, when I came here in 2018, the country only had 16 working ambulances. So this organization said, hey, this is our challenge. We have 33 hospitals. So I said, okay, I'll buy 30 ambulances, I'll bring it in, and I'll bring my platform, Daycare Health, and I'll train your members. So I was paying to train them on CPR, first aid, and I said, now your members could use the app in the same way you call an Uber or Bolt. They could connect with a midwife, they could connect with a nurse, or your members who provide, we call it non-emergency medical transportation in the States. They could ride their car just like Uber, but I gave them all first aid kits. I put wheelchair in the cars, and nobody was patronizing the service. Only the African American community was utilizing the service, but I'm dumping $80,000, $100,000 into the business. So when I went to the developers and I said, hey, you guys have 24-hour security, why not put one of my ambulances at your location? And then when any of your members are, your community is sick, they could now use the ambulance and get to the hospital quickly, and nobody did it. So I said, you know what, I'll do it myself. So I started developing communities. We have a medical center in there. But my app allows even doctors from the US or Ghanaians outside to use it and type in East Legon, and you could see one of my nurses in East Legon, and you could send her to take care of your family and pay $3 or $5 from the States instead of having to send money. In reverse, I could be here and my mom could be sick in America. I type in Houston, Texas, and I could see one of my nurses or my doctors and book it from here to take care of my loved one. So it's not a concern for me because I have a solution for it and I've been putting it in. And because of that, I've helped one doctor from Texas is moving back. He's Nigerian, but his kids are in school here. I have a registered nurse from Philadelphia. Her husband is Ghanaian. They've been wanting to come back to Ghana. So they're using my platform. It was a concern for me, but there's people coming up with solutions to these things. And to this young lady's point, when we come back home, we bring our skill set, we bring our research, resources, and our know-how, and we could deploy it. So, but that was the hardest thing for me, was to get Ghanaians to adopt, using the app the same way they would use Uber to connect with healthcare workers. And it wasn't until COVID happened that people from the States that knew that I was in that business started calling, hey, Marvin, you're no longer in America. Can I license your technology for, Atlanta? And I was like, hey, I never even thought about that. I'm not coming back to America, sure. Give me $35,000. And they did. But before that, I was living in my ambulance. I was paying 300 CDs when I finally got a place to stay. So I struggled in Ghana. But what it taught me was that you need to figure out how to make dollars while living in Ghana. And COVID actually created that opportunity for me. So, there's solutions to the healthcare problems.
Right, thanks a lot. And it's good you're in the industry because you've covered a lot of ground. And but on a broader business point, I think, is my mic on? Can you hear me? On a broader business point, I think one thing that I used to say always, that every business in America will come to Ghana, or there's an opportunity for it in Ghana at some point. But I think sometimes people forget that it requires training your potential consumers to, at times, to really understand that they have that need. And it's interesting the journey that you had and getting to that point. Now, do you want to say something about the healthcare at Nanama or the African person? Very quickly, one minute, if you don't mind.
For me, I've had a positive experience with the healthcare here. I've utilized a dermatologist, and also I'm currently going to herbalist for a skin problem I developed in the UK. And what I like about healthcare here in Ghana is accessibility, because you can, if you pay your surcharge and you can see a doctor right now. Coming from the UK, any of my European viewers, we have the NHS healthcare, and you have to, try to play hide and go seek with finding a doctor, making an appointment. If you need a specialist such as a dermatologist, the wait can be up to like 90 days. So being able to go to, a clinic today, right now, and get some service is helpful. And also, I find that many non-Black doctors, they don't have the expertise of what our people need regarding healthcare. So you have doctors here that have trained internationally, a lot of them. They've seen many health conditions, and they are more sensitive because it's, someone in their reflection, in my opinion. So I've had positive experiences with the healthcare here in Ghana.
Thanks a lot. And speaking of dermatologists, Naya is in the skin business, so if you want shea butter. Now, but you made a point about if you are an American, you're moving here, stay American, right? Which brings me to my next point. So one question I get from a lot of my friends in America sometimes is, about the right of abode. They've heard Africans in the diaspora can come to Ghana and get residency. But there's never any clarity. Many of them can't find clarity. And going back to the points I raised in the beginning, who even has that right? Is it people whose 4 grandparents went as slaves or were enslaved or born in America, let's say? Is it a Tanzanian living in the UK or Belgium, qualified, etc.? And I've been trying to find information since then. It's been difficult to get information every time. And it was ironic that I think a few years ago, when I went to the website to try to find information, this is what I found, which was like, well, you're right. But I also see that, and I went back there again today to find out information for how does a person of African descent take advantage of Ghana's outreach for people to come and get a right of abode. What have been your experiences? And I know this is a sensitive subject, so it doesn't have to be your personal experiences. If you know anybody who has tried being successful or not being successful, what's their story? And how can somebody who's also trying to move to Ghana, what can they learn from it to become, if they want to come and live in Ghana? And that goes to you or to anybody in the audience. So, but you can start here.
You can start.
Yeah, somebody else? Okay, go ahead.
So currently, I'm a resident in Ghana. I moved here in 2020, so I've been here over 3 years now. And from my understanding, the process is that you file for residency for 5 years, reside in the country, and then you can apply for your citizenship. So that's my understanding of how the process goes. I have other friends that have also married Ghanaian citizens and acquired their citizenship through marriage. So, you know, similar to what people do abroad. If you can marry here, then you can get it that way. So for me, it was kind of a simple process. You go to immigration, you fill out the form, you submit the fee, and I got my passport back. I'm on a British passport, so I think it came about 3 weeks later, and just renew it. And it's kind of been a straightforward process for me.
Now, is that limited to, is that for everybody or people of African descent?
Yeah, that's for everybody. I mean, for what I understand, there's not provisions for the diaspora, but I know some organizations that are pushing to get a special provision for diasporans. And then, you know, there has also been, the president granted about, I believe, 200 citizenships over the past couple years.
Yeah.
But that was, you know, that was more or less a special occasion. It wasn't, you know, there's no process currently. So I think those things are developing. And I think diasporans should also have patience understanding that this en masse migration to the continent is historical. And there are not a lot of, you know, legalities and things that have made provisions for this because it's never happened. So we can be some of the pioneers as far as pushing these initiatives and, you know, making them reality.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned procedures because, let me see, where is it? Oh, no, never mind. So go ahead, Lakeisha.
Yeah, I think you said it beautifully and you covered everything. It's the positive aspect of it is that we're essentially doing it for the first time. So there's not going to be a smooth process, and you definitely will have to have a lot of patience. I mean, a lot. I've been here 9 years, and I'm still on a residency, right? A lot of times people ask, like, where's your passport? Like, you should have a passport by now. There are people who have gotten their passport, you know, they come 1 year, and I think it was that year return year. And I was like, now, hold on. You know, I've been here for some time, but that's the thing, the patience, right? There's no particular process. I think there was a policy that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah put in place for, you know, Black diasporans to come back. They should be able to get a passport, but in practice today, it's not as linear. And what I'll say too is, think about it like this. If someone who's not from America came to America and went up to a consulate and said, I want an American passport, would they be able to get it as fast and as soon and on demand? Absolutely not. So the truth is, when you come here, you are an immigrant. Period. And I cannot sugarcoat that. That's the truth. So there's a process and patience that you have to exercise. Start with your multiple entry visa, travel, move around, and then graduate to your residency. Usually that comes with some work, permit or something of the sort. You can open up a bank account. You can, as an American, speaking from that perspective, if you have your residency, you can go into Nigeria, you can go into different places using your residency. You won't necessarily have to go back to America to apply to go into Nigeria. So go ahead and pace yourself, have patience, understand the system, which honestly, you'll never fully understand it, but be open with the process and learning about it.
She said we don't understand it either.
Yeah, you'll never understand it.
But Lakeisha, I'm going to push back on that a bit because
push back.
you mentioned that you can't just go to America and ask for U.S. passport. But America has not made a promise that everybody of African descent can come and have the right of abode in America.
Yeah, that's true.
We as Ghana have made that promise.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to get that information from different sources. No one seems to know.
No one knows.
Should we just take that promise back?
No,
I mean,
think,
because people ask me all the time and I don't know what to say.
Right. If you're asking me that question, what I would say is we need to maybe we need to put the structures in to fulfill the promise. Or look at a phased process to accomplishing that goal. Maybe it's not that you're going to give everyone in influx on site citizenship. Maybe it's a 10, 20, 50-year plan, and you gradually move into that, because the truth is...
Hi, thank you. Actually, about the right of abode, citizenship, what is defining the diaspora and everything else. So it's an actual booklet that is out, and hopefully if we get everybody's email address, I'm sure at Diaspora, as an organization, we can send you the e-copy. But it is exactly what you said. It is a strategy, whereas they're looking at over a period of like 20 years, what they're looking to achieve, what we're looking to achieve as a country. So we are on it as a country. So not to say that we're not on it. It's been very intentional. So now Ghana, like one of the things that was said at the launch was that now Ghana, whenever people are approaching the Minister of Foreign Affairs or Diaspora Office, they're able to say, no, we have a policy now. We're working with something. And with that policy, they have a 20-member steering committee that is constantly working, and this committee consists of different people from different ministries that have come together, and they're constantly reviewing things as it goes. So it's an active engagement policy that they're working with.
Yeah, I'm happy you brought that up.
I'm glad to hear that too.
I'm happy you brought that up, thank you. Because I know that this has they've been working on this before your return, actually, and it has been in the making. However, the pushback that I've kind of been hearing is that engagement policy is focused on the Ghanaian diaspora mostly, not necessarily global African diaspora. I think there is something in there, but the way it is maybe put out, when you see it, you might think like, oh, all diaspora. So I would encourage everyone to read it as well, but I think that was some pushback on it, like, oh, well, this is actually for Ghanaian diaspora. Where do the global African diaspora fit within this trajectory?
Yeah, that's very important because, okay, well.
Yes, you're right. That was the initial thing. It was looking initially, and it does feature heavily on the Ghanaian diaspora, it does. But then, because as Diaspora as an organization, we went to a few of the IOM meetings with the Diaspora Affairs, etc. And the conversation was actually much more broader, as in defining what a diasporan is. Because it even goes beyond saying an African American. They went as far as saying anybody who's black outside of Ghana, even outside of the continent, because if you're within the continent, you have a place of abode, right? But if you're outside of the continent and you're black, and you don't have a direct linkage, then you are a diasporan. So then the policy also takes that into consideration. And I mean, you mentioned earlier about some people can easily get citizenship here, but they also have a thing whereas you have to be seen as you're actually adding value to the economy that you're actually in before they will even consider the citizenship. Like, people can't turn up and, yes, you're right, the government shouldn't have put it out and said, come home. we're welcoming you, when it has all of these stipulations to it. So I think that was just a bit of PR, right? But yeah, but it does also include non-Ghanaians.
So can I add to that? Because I kind of disagree with you guys wanting to take the promise back. But let me first say, I wasn't never in a rush to get a citizenship, because when I came here, I came and I brought my business. So immediately I came, I got my residency, I got my work permit. So I've been living, I have my Ghana card. So I felt like the process was pretty straightforward. I got married because I found somebody that I love, not for citizenship. I don't even care. I fly with my Guyanese passport. I don't even use my American passport, right? But I still feel welcomed here. Now, you said, should we take back the promise? As an African-American male that lived in America and was traumatized, I was here when the call went out. And to hear and see this short, little, stocky president say, you don't have to deal with that, it touched my heart, because nobody had ever said, you have some place to come. Come be safe. You don't have to tolerate that. And you know, when you speak truth to power, you know, America don't like that. So when Kufuor did that, I was like, wow. I felt like I belonged, I felt loved, I felt safe. Even though the systems are not in place, it's not worked out, let's work towards it. Let's take some time. One gentleman said something to me. I'm a United States Marine trained. We're trained to be 6 minutes early is on time is late, 6 minutes late, you never should have showed up. So the Ghana man time drives me crazy. However, right, I've learned so much patience since being here, right? But also, this guy said to me, he said, Marvin, think about it like this. Ghana at the time was 65 years. He said, the developed world's 300, 400, 500 years old. It's like expecting a 12-year-old to do the same thing a 50-year-old would do, or to have the experience and the skill. When he said that, it really put things in perspective for me. And I stopped having these unrealistic expectations. She said it so eloquently. You can't go to America and get your citizenship right away, right? My mom went, I think she got her citizenship 8, 10 years into it, right? We got ours, I still ain't gonna pick mine up, right? But you can't come to Ghana just because the call went out think that tomorrow is gonna happen. And I'm enjoying watching the process of Ghana improve. Does it get frustrating sometimes? Absolutely. But I love the way that it's been coming together. And I know a lot of people don't like the party that's in power right now, but to see this man go to the US and stand in the US and say, yo, you don't have to deal with this, come home. There's a place for you. It still warms my heart just saying that, because I know what some majority of black men go through. I don't want to say all, it's not everybody's experience, but I grew up in the urban inner city, and the engagement with police, you know, being policed by people that is not the same hue as you is very traumatic. I don't have that problem here, so I'm let them work it out. They can take their sweet time. I'm not in no rush, but I think the process is straightforward, and I love seeing that they're working on it.
Thank you. I want to push back on some things, but not now, because I want the audience to be able to get into the game. And yes, please, go ahead. Try again. Use the green button.
Good evening, everyone. Yes. So I am Giz. Just to introduce myself as someone having a double challenge on top of yours, I will say. As you can hear, I am a non-English speaker. No, I don't want to say I am French. I am holding a French passport. So I am coming from Guadeloupe. Okay, we're French, but we are their black people. So we have been experiencing racism since we were born. So that's something. And why I escaped from France and choose Ghana as a place to live and die. So I don't consider myself as a returnee. I didn't answer any calls like, let's go home. Not that I am arguing with people who say that. My story is not this one. When I came here, it was to be part of the people who will be building the United Nations of Africa, being skilled, or of a lot of skills and all this kind of thing. So I thought that it would start here in Ghana. So I was free to elect a country everywhere in the world. I literally took the map and said, oh, it could be Ghana. And I needed to find a country where I will not, it should be the only country to say I will not, I could not move. I should be staying there. So I am here stuck, but with pleasure, and things are not going the way it should have gone. Every people who have been promising me things before I came, nothing. It was, I will not say it's lies, but the weight of words here is not the same like everywhere else. People don't understand, don't figure out how not right it is to promise accommodation, work, this and that, and you don't keep your words to say none of this thing happened to me. But before I left, I took notes of, oh, go there, my friend is an attorney, a friend of friend got a lot of houses, you will get one. So I took notes of all this kind of thing. And since I put my feet at Kotoka Airport, December 2020, none of this thing happened, none at all. To say, I thought that I had hallucinated, but because I took back my notes, I realized that none of these people kept their words. And to say, and that's something, don't take it personal or take it personal, I don't really care. But it's very Ghanaian. People kind of don't keep their words, they just speak. And someone coming from another country to make a proper living, expecting this to happen, when it doesn't happen, it could have been very dangerous, because I could have been homeless. I moved home. I left Kotoka to be in a slum. So, you know, whatever. So I am very happy to be here. And the second challenge is, whatever I can do, I will never look like a Ghanaian woman. To say, I lost 32 kilos being here, not eating properly, whatever. So I am not saying that a Ghanaian woman are a bit, but they are not skinny as I am now. So it's not over days that I will gain some weight. I am trying. And then every time I open my mouth, forget about it. My accent is just killing me. And I don't breathe, I don't walk like an African woman. So that adding to the difficulty of my life, of different moments, like going to the market or everywhere else. And then the last thing, speaking about prices, where prices are, is it a word, fluctuant, are changing all the time? To say you might be asking a price at 10 a.m. You say, okay, I'm coming back. You're coming back half an hour later, the price is no more the same. And then the first price was anyway different, because you are not from here. It was not intuitive that you asked for it, and the way you were walking, and I am a designer, so I always kind of dress like that, so obviously I am already not really like everyone else. So I said, why someone like, let's say Trump, if Trump was, Trump is someone who got a lot of money, anyone. Why? So I am trying to reach Ghanaians the way they think, because I told them you need to stop this bullshit. Not everyone coming from Kotoka got money. For them, foreigners is money. Because I might be as poor as regular as you are. And it is a fact, because even if I am overskilled, here I can't even deal with my domain, my expertise. So I am earning like less than 1,500 CDs a month. That doesn't pay my rent, nothing, just bills. I am not complaining. I'm just saying that being here, I have to live as a regular, but with different needs, different standards, because you cannot erase your ways.
Yeah. And I want to ask you a question, follow-up question. You mentioned how you came in December 2020 and a lot of promises that were made to you did not come to fruition. What made you stay?
Because when I packed my things, I said I want to find a place in the world when I will come to live and die. End of the story. So when the crisis started and the coup d'etat and whatever, I am in some groups and mostly African American people. They're trying to say, oh, you need to figure out if the embassy call you, you need to pack only one bag. And then they were like all under stress and this and that. Wow, one bag and this, a backpack and this, and not even a suitcase, backpack and this. So in matter of minutes, I got stressed. I said, what are you speaking about you? You said that you're coming to a place to live and die. To say you came to a place where there was people, it was not empty. You came thinking that you will be part of the crowd. So what is right for Ghanaian is right for me, and what will be wrong for me.
So thank you very much.
Sorry, I will never, and I am still privileged to say, even if things got wrong, it will not be as wrong for me as for them. So I am going nowhere. I am dying here for sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you so much. And we don't often hear from brothers and sisters from the French-speaking world, and your perspective is very, very useful. Thank you very much. And so I'll come back to you in a minute. Let me take the gentleman in the back because we haven't heard from that side.
Greetings to everybody here. I'm very glad to be here. This is my first time coming to any diaspora and affairs like this. And I like the discussion that is going on, but I want to take it from an angle because of my sister that just talked now. I'm not a diasporan from America or England or anywhere. I used to live in New Zealand, the end of the world. Now, it feels like anytime the diasporan conversation is going on, the focus has always been America, 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 America. And we have forgotten that most black people left the shores over here to so many countries. Central America, South America. So the conversation needs to go beyond from the political level, even for them to understand that there's somebody in Brazil who is African and identifying themselves want to come back to Ghana. They might have a language problem because they speak Portuguese. What are some of the things that we can think of when we are calling diasporans beyond English-speaking countries, where people could come here and not feel like they are part of the, the African global movement, even though we're saying, come home, come home. Come home shouldn't be based on only America or England, but it looks like that's where the conversation has been. I'm not done yet. I just want to add something again. The most important thing that a lot of diasporans are facing in Africa is that Africans, 54 countries, West Africa where slavery happened, most people living here don't understand the slavery story. So if you are walking on the street, the average person on the street does not understand why an American person or an American woman is in Ghana. So for them, it's like, we have been told so many times that the best life you can have is to go to America. And all of a sudden, you see your brothers and sisters over here who want to rent a house in Medina, and you go, oh, you left America to come and rent in Medina? Do you get what I mean? So the people on the ground don't understand this psychology. It has to come in a way where we have to do mass education. Our history book does not even talk about slavery much anymore. Therefore, we see our brothers and sisters as foreigners because a lot of them have never read the history book. They don't know about the story, and all of a sudden, year of return. We saw so many people in Airwalk Stadium. People are standing there. Who are these people? Why are they here? So once we are calling people to come, we have to be doing a lot of work to do a good education so that everything will be in a symbiotic relationship.
Thank you so much. Those are, I'm not cutting you short but they are excellent points. The first one, and that is why I was so appreciative to have this lady's perspective from the non-English speaking world. And on the second point too, it's an excellent point which I personally noticed that sometime many years ago when I went to Cape Coast Castle with someone, and I realized at that time the tour guide did not really understand the depth of experience that person standing there was going through. It's gotten much better now. I think they're much better trained, but it's important. And also, with the year of return, I thought it was an opportunity to educate Ghanaians a lot about the slavery story that Many, you're right, many don't know. They have no idea or have very shallow idea about the depth of that experience. So thank you very much for both interventions. And say hello to the people in New Zealand for us. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I know there's someone that wants to say.
Come to
So
you.
again, part of the diaspora policy is that there's going to be sensitization activities for Ghanaians so they can understand what is actually taking place right now. And what you'd be actually interested to see is that there's a lot of young people that they know what a diaspora is now. It's like a buzzword from, like a Ghanaian. So I went to Shell petrol station this was about 6 months ago, and the girls behind the cashiers were like, "Oh, are you a diasporan?" And I was like, "No, don't call me that, I'm not." But so
how do you define a diaspora, and why aren't you? Are you not? I don't know.
No, I'm not.
Okay,
so
all right.
I don't identify with that. So it was just like, okay, no. But anyway, I just wanted to say something because I'm hearing some things that people say. And again, for people who are listening, I think what you need to understand about Ghanaians is that a lot of the things that we do and say is not a direct translation to how you would think it is in the UK or the US. So some things that are happening to you, it happens to us as Ghanaians. It's not exclusive. If, like you mentioned, the price is going up 30 minutes later, it happens to all of us. Like everything, only if we were that well crafted to say, okay, we're going to do this here. So it happens across board. And it may feel like, oh, because we're Obronies or whatever, then this is why they're doing it. But what you'll find is that even I can get my staff to make a call on something sometimes, and the same thing will happen to them. They'll go to the market, someone would ignore them, and then they'll go. It's standard. So I think sometimes we also need to disabuse our mind that Ghanaians are very intentional about certain things, because they're not. Like you mentioned, what I liked, what you said earlier about the whole Obroni thing. It's not like going to the UK or US and someone saying, "Hey, nigga." Sorry, was I supposed to say the N-word? Sorry. It's not the same as...
It's a safe space.
Yeah. So it's definitely not the same as that. Like she said, it's just identifying, oh, this is a foreign person. Yeah. And we do it to ourselves, even as Ga, Ewe, we do it to ourselves again.
Before Uber, whenever I would stop a taxi, as soon as I stop the taxi, I'll start speaking Ga. Before they even have any ideas, they start trying to charge me something else. So I go immediately. And I'll come to you, Prof, in a second. But before then, you mentioned that people think you're a diaspora, say you're not, etc. We have here Christabel Daze, the founder of Diaspora, is here. And I'm curious for, round of applause. And on that note, I'd like to ask you, when you're founding a diaspora, what in your mind, how did you conceptualize a diaspora to be different from diaspora?
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. I thought I would speak at the end, so I was going to be quiet. Okay, right. But let me tell you a funny story that happened yesterday. Went to see a friend at living room. She was having lunch with a bunch of friends. We all come outside. We get there, and then one of the ladies, who I don't know, says, "This one, she's an Ahaspran." I'm like, okay. And then next to me was Pearl. Pearl was an Ahaspran. So we're both looking at each other like, okay, she's going to insult us. Let's see what to do. Then she goes, so then we're like, oh, what is a diaspora? She said, let me explain. A diaspora is like you. You wear heels and you dress up. You went to the US and study, but when you come back, you dress up like us. Diaspora is the chalote and shorts. So that is the definition.
Okay. There you go. Philosophical difference between diaspora and a diaspora.
Totally,
right.
Totally random. But let me come at the end.
Okay. Let's others come. Great. And sorry, yes, please take the microphone all the way to the corner.
I came here because my daughter told me about this.
Abna?
Yes.
Okay.
So you can tell her mother and I showed up.
I'll do that. Thank you so much. And sorry, okay. One of Ghana's premier scientists from Pennsylvania. I don't know if you're back in Ghana now. You used to be a professor there, right?
I will talk to you about this later. I'm pretty sure that this meeting is not to discuss slavery. But as I get older, a question that bothers me is our historians and social scientists in Africa, in Ghana, I don't believe have really spent the time to struggle with why it is that we sold some of our people. We often blame the white people for stealing our people and subjecting our people to all kinds of terrible experiences. That's very, very important. But I also think that we need to struggle with why is it that we sold our people? Because I believe that fundamentally that has not stopped. I believe that our leaders in most black African countries are slave traders. It's a very complicated statement. And I know that it's probably not why you're here, but I encourage some of you to think about it, because we need answers to this question. Right now, Ghana is struggling with having some discussions about lithium. This is a metal that is very important in this emerging new world of automobiles driven by batteries, not gasoline. And some of the discussions are very sad because the old selfishness, I'm not a historian, but I believe the old selfishness that led some of our ancestors to steal and sell neighboring ethnic groups is still with us. That's all I would say. Thank you for your
Thank you very much.
tolerance.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And on that note, I have a question. Let me provoke you a little bit. I'll come to you, sir, in a minute. I'll come to you in a minute. Have you experienced racism in Ghana? You have? Okay. That's the question. Yes, take the mic back, please. So who are the hand back? Okay, yeah, please.
Thank you. So for me, my experience was brief, but yes, I did experience racism in Ghana. It was actually like I had gone to a shop, I won't, say the name, but I had gone to a place that was run by non-Ghanaian people. And it was strange because the customer service kind of changed. Like I was ahead of somebody who was in line who was non-black, and they refused to serve me and they served the person in front of me. And kind of when I confronted her and I was like, why don't you want to service me? She just kind of like scoffed and was like, oh, I didn't see you. But she continued to service that person. And so at that point I was just like, okay, well, I'm not coming here, like going forward. But yeah, it was one time very problematic, but yeah, true story.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody want to add anything to that?
I would say.
Go ahead, please.
I would say I haven't experienced racism, but I've definitely seen the preferential treatment of non-black people receive here. The perspective of them and the priority of them, and also the desire to mix and mingle or marry, fraternize with them over perhaps, other Africans, other tribes, members of the diaspora, and so on and so forth. So I do attribute that as the remnants of colonialism. It also comes from the media perspective of the West that paints certain people as generous and benevolent, and obviously the religious and the education here in Ghana, which, there's class, and colorism and things like that. So I haven't directly encountered it, but I know it's an element here.
Yeah, there's also, sometimes I try to, when I hear some of these things, and even with the diaspora things, one thing I find interesting where the average Ghanaian also feels the diaspora is getting professional treatment over them just being here. Because then it's almost like, okay, even for example, earlier when you guys were talking about the president announcing that he was giving citizenship and, to people of African descent, they should come home. It's almost like you're in your house and there's no conversation, but then they're inviting visitors, right? So it's like the Ghanaians don't even understand what exactly the call is about. Why are they here? And then the understanding is, okay, well, then maybe they are bringing money into the country for some reason. So I feel like, so we are giving them professional treatment because it's going to benefit us. So sometimes even how certain behaviors about, okay, well, we'll charge you more. Because like he was talking about earlier, you think this is cheap because you pay it in dollars. It's like, okay, well, then pay us more so that we can also improve our economic our money. But one word, I think Ghanaians, it's almost like the Enyeshi thing. We take it and then we will use it against you when we can. So there's a weird way of saying, okay, we'll just let you keep coming, but then whenever you buy from us, we'll increase the price. And then you say, but where I'm coming from, I'm also poor. You're like, well, we don't care. Here too, we are also poor. We are poorer than you, and we actually want to be where you are. So I understand the stories or conversations on slavery we don't understand, because as much as you would say people outside Africa would have lived through generations of that, if you were 5 generations later, you don't even understand because it was never discussed in your house. You were born and raised in Accra. You went to school at Richchurch. You went to Legon or went to school outside, and you are here. The experience of what an African American is experience, or a Jamaican, or somebody from New Zealand or from a French country comes into Ghana and says, I want to. We don't think like that. Like I was saying, when I went to the US, people had to point out racism to me, not because I was illiterate, but because it wasn't the focus of how I was raised. And so the same way when a Ghanaian lives at home, and this is their life, and they go about their day-to-day, and they buy food from the side of the road, and they meet somebody, it's almost like they've met a tourist. So even in that conversation about where are you from, what is then you say, I'm Ghanaian. Why are you trying to treat me different? I'm also African. But in essence, you can't actually blame them because they didn't grow up with you. And so there's some education that has to go both ways. That the Ghanaian has to get, and the American also has to get, about who we all are and how we have to integrate.
Okay, thank you very much.
Otherwise, it's going to be a fight.
Very good point. And I agree. And I took some privilege because we started a bit late, but we should be wrapping up in the next 7 minutes. On the point of the economics, one thing I would say is that I noticed that the 10% service charge for some restaurants started after the year of return. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. And what would you say is the foreigner premium on prices in Ghana? Like 30% markup, 50%, or double? All right. You have the mic at the end. I'm just curious from your experiences. Or it's hard to tell.
It's whatever they decide, but then we all bear it.
Yeah,
it's
of
not
course.
only the foreigner that bears
Of course.
it. If I go to a restaurant today, I still pay that 10% service
No,
charge.
not the 10% service charge.
Oh, you mean
but in general.
The increase in prices?
Yeah, how much did
Well,
double the
bread was 5 cedis last year, and it's 15 cedis today. The average Ghanaian
No, what I mean is that if somebody whom people think is a Ghanaian goes to buy something where someone they think is diaspora, they double it. There's no answer to that.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
But even the average Ghanaians, don't your neighbors
Of course,
beat you?
of course. So, very quickly, Emmanuel had a point, and then I'm sorry we have to wrap it up. So, Emmanuel, go ahead. Yeah. And then we'll take yours 30 seconds, then we'll wrap up.
Sorry, thanks. Good evening, Comrade. Good evening, everyone.
Please keep it to 1 minute. Emmanuel.
I will. I just wanted to talk about intent and manage expectations, and hopefully that covers quite a bit. So really excited. I think the gentleman was asking why we're here. And the intention for our Diaspora was for young professionals to come here and matter. And there have been multiple programs to do that. And really excited to hear someone like you join in after, over 10 years of making this happen. The lady who I was talking about trustworthiness when it comes to Ghanaians made me think about intent and intentions. And I think that a lot of times the intention that was presented by the government in year of return was for people to come, but the intention of those of us receiving that wasn't that they were coming to make our lives better. It was almost as if you feel like you have a deal wherever you're coming from, or historically you're part of a Pan-African movement or a United Africa. That hasn't been translated. So I went to school in Ghana. It hasn't been translated in my social development, or I have not been asked whether I'm going to buy in to be there. So that intent is also quite important. The other bit, and it might speak to what Kobna is saying, speaks about managed expectations. Two parts. You threw in something about race, and this year has been crazy with me and race because I do own a property, and for some reason I have a lot of Lebanese and foreigners, specifically Lebanese, coming in here. And I'll speak on that a bit because prior to this engagement, a lot of people don't understand that some Lebanese have been here for over 50 years, and there was a political intentionality of having Lebanese run some aspects of our economy, including trade and commerce. And so when it comes to things like the Max Marts and others, there's a specific demographic of people who run that. And those are needed commodities for us. And a lot of people don't realize, unless you engage with them, work for them or not, there is a lot of racial tension within that. But for some reason, we're managed away from that. So a lot of Ghanaians go to other countries and we say, oh, there's no racism in Ghana. There is. The other part also is, then I think I was catching you guys online on Facebook before I came about rent and the managed expectation of the cost of living and others. And that comes from structure. So to your point about economics and the price, when you don't have structure to compare and a way to regulate prices, it becomes a free-for-all. And some restaurants and some stores, they don't even put their pricing on the label because there's no regulation and no structure for that. And so in the context of this conversation, it becomes, I'm a foreigner, so there isn't that. But in different contexts, it can be, you sound different, you're not from the north, you're from the south, but because of that lack of regulation, then exploitation happens. So I think there's so much that we can tease out here, but I think the intent is important, and that's why we continue to support Diaspora. I think there is a call out for us to be, we're that American bias, but our intent is to have all of you from the Caribbean join, sign up, pay, there's an app, contributes. I think some people have done this for 10 years. The managed expectation is that we're all figuring this out together. Those of us who are millennials, those who are coming back, those of us who live in other countries like South Africa, I used to live in Mauritius, who face the same things that some of you are talking about. Let's manage our expectations and building together because it's the intention and manage expectations that gets us where we want to go together. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Emmanuel. Very much. We appreciate it. And then we'll take one last point, and then we'll wrap up.
So my name is Isaac Dutinakwa. I guess you can say I was born in Japan. I was born in Austria. Lived in Austria, Germany, UK, and moved to Ghana 8 years ago. And a lot of people are saying you're going the wrong way. Happy to be here. It's been ups and downs, and lots of downs, lots of sideways. But to touch on a couple of points, yes, the economy is hard. Yes, because of my accent, I get priced over things usually. So I have to ask my cousins to go ask for taxis or go to the market. I don't try to go to the market because it doesn't make sense. To your point as well, I think we are very communal, which is great, but when the trust is not there and the communal aspects don't work, then it's a very hard place. Because over here, we don't kind of have systems, we have people. And if you don't have the right people, whether it's family or people you can trust, then Ghana can be much harder than it needs to be. Yes, if you're earning dollars, it's fantastic. If you're not, it's a very tough place to be with dollar prices or the CD we see the CD fluctuates, but it only free falls. It only goes in one direction. On the slavery aspect, I know we're not here for slavery, just 10 seconds. I think around the world, people sold people. And it happened in Africa as well. But the institution that came from the sold people, what happened in America was very different. Because the Akans had slaves, but a slave could end up marrying the slave owner's daughter. So you could actually inherit land from your slave master. So when you were selling people as slaves, as properties, it wasn't with the intent that you send them into the slavery that became the transatlantic slaves. But one of the issues that we're still facing today is we're still thinking very tribal. So, I mean, you mentioned I'm a proud Fanti and whatever, and we still think this type of tribal mentality, which is great. We have our languages, our food, our customs, but we're not one people. And if you look at the different European nations, England, France, they're one kingdom, one language across this whole area, and we still have these multiple languages. That doesn't, on one hand, it's beautiful, on the other hand, it hinders us as people. So this is my contributions.
Thank you very much for your contribution. And now we have somebody from Japan, Austria, via Austria. It's great. It's not just American in the UK. Sorry, we have to wrap up. Okay, 15 seconds. Okay, all right. Yeah, please, yeah.
Sorry, I need to correct.
Just
I need to correct something.
Yeah.
I need to point out that that's the best time of my whole life. I'm 63 years old. That's the best experience. I love Ghana because that doesn't sound like that while I was speaking.
Okay, I understand.
So that's very important.
Okay,
You
all
know,
right.
The experience is new, but it's not wrong.
Okay, thank you very much. Much appreciated. So now part of this, our purpose is to come up with try to raise some issues for people who are thinking of moving to Ghana to think about, and also for government, in a way, what government can do to make it better. And my understanding, just in the interest of time, my understanding is that for people who are thinking of moving back, moving to Ghana, set expectations right. You said if you have a foreign passport, keep it. You don't have to lose it. On healthcare, which is something that usually concerns many people, it's manageable, but then you should also have the risk things and have insurance in place. And also, one thing advantage is that you can see, if you want to see a doctor, you can see them the same day, once you have your cash, or whatever it is, right? And I think one thing that came for government, there's regulation, there's education on the experience of black people around the world, and then there's also immigration issue of having clarity about what it means to have a right of abode in Ghana. And I would add that this conversation has been about moving to Ghana in terms of returning to Ghana, but it's always a good time to visit Ghana, and it's always fun. I try to be in Ghana at this time every year, not for partying, but because every 1st January I go to Winneba for our annual masquerade party, and so I'm plugging it. Winneba, 1st January, everybody. But otherwise, it's been great having you. We are so grateful for you to make the time through this traffic, to volunteer your time, your experiences. Same as you for making it through all this. And I will hand the microphone over to Christabel again to wrap it up.
Thank you so much. It's been an excellent evening. It's a bit late, so I won't talk too much. But I was just telling Nadia, I just came from Ethiopia 3 days ago, and a couple of days before I left, I went to the markets with 2 of my colleagues, and they told me, don't speak. The reality is when you are a foreigner, it's evident. When we've traveled abroad and lived abroad, we've gone through the things that we don't understand, the systems that we don't get, in places where the best systems exist. Somebody said Ghana is about people, not system. The people is the system. I think sometimes we need to think about it that way. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I would love to see us build systems, and it will happen over time. But it allows you to have a softer landing and enjoy it. The mindset of this is a new place, this is a new culture, and I'm going to learn it. But also making the networks. This is why we're here. You know, it was a group of people who came together and said, for us to stay at home, we need to be able to support each other. So find that support system. It will come in different ways, but it always helps you to navigate it. And most importantly, be positive about it. I was just listening and laughing. I have changed my attitude towards problems. Every morning I have health, I have life, I'm good. You know, and when you start from there, it makes it a little bit better. And the last thing I'll say is, let's try not to generalize. Like Nanama said so eloquently, it happens to all of us. When I go to Art Center, they say, so I don't know why. Apparently, I look like a Senegalese, but I'm not tall enough. I don't get it. But somehow, immediately, I get that 30% increment Kwabena talked about. And then when I speak Twi to it, kind of sort of has an accent. It's a tough word, so just enjoy it. Best place to be in the world in December is right here. It's right here. We've learned a lot. Next week, Saturday, on the 30th of December, Ahayede. Ahayede means here is good, as in Ghana is good. We'll have a Diaspora festival. We'll have a blast. This is the 3rd time we've done it, and it's been amazing each time. Don't miss out. It's at Ridge Bank, just around the corner, actually. Bring a friend, tell a friend to tell a friend. And thank you so much for participating. Let's give a round of applause to Kwabena for doing this. Our goals in these conversations is to support our own, have our own propel what they're doing. So Kwabena is an example of that. And stay in touch on our website, www.ahaspora.com, and be tuned to our programs. Thank you so much and have... Oh yes, and my ambassador Emmanuel told you we have an app, a community app, where we have discussions. So just look for Diaspora on the Google Play Store or the App Store and be a part of the community. And it's all a progress train. They told you you're going in the wrong direction. You were actually joining the progress train. That's what you should tell them. Have a good night. Thank you.
Before we go,